Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidda-didda-doo.
Minor Wisdom.
All right, Minor Wisdom is back after almost a month off. I apologize for not announcing that to those three of you that were probably looking forward to your Sunday episodes, but I am back. I've got quite a few interviews under my belt. This week I have Demond Wilson. Demond taught with Missy Head, as you'll hear in his little background beginning at the top of this podcast, or at the top of his interview. And Demond, man, you know, I've started listening to this podcast called Smartless with Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, Will Arnett. That's one of the things I've been doing recently, or the past month, just catching up on that because it's hilarious and very fun, and basically the same type of podcast, except they're making a lot more money off of it, and it's probably funnier, and just, anyway. But one of the things they said is they always, after every guest, they do, oh, what a great person, blah, 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 you know, all these great. And finally, after I forget who they interviewed, it could have been LeBron James or somebody, but somebody you wouldn't think of, that they said, no, this is, we say that a lot after people are done with their interview, and we don't always mean it, or sometimes we embellish or whatever. Well, for Demond, like I say, you know, these are great interviews, and they all are in their own right. I've had a few that are better than others. You can decide on which ones those are. But Demond, like, he's just a huge ball of inspiration. And my normal kind of formula, if there is one, is to interview somebody and then kind of end it, hopefully 45 minutes to an hour in, with some sort of big crescendo of inspiration, or a big laugh or something like that. And right off the cuff, excuse me, I'm looking at a cup. Right off the cuff, he inspired. And me, at least, I don't care if it was you, again, I'm not getting paid for this, he inspired me. And I was like, well, I can't end it now. That would be a pretty short interview, so I just kept going. And then he did another one, and I was inspired by his words again. And then, so if you're feeling like I should keep ending this particular episode because you're like, hey, this is your normal formula, Blake, yeah, you're right. There could have been 8 times that I could have ended this episode, because it ended with just inspiring words. And just he is a walking, talking book of inspiration, and I can't thank him enough for doing that. I was able to interview quite a number of other people. I'm actually sitting as we speak in a hotel in Bastrop in a Best Western. I've got a lot of history with Best Westerns back when I toured. It wasn't the best hotel I stayed in, but this one's not bad. But getting ready, prepping for the last of the 3 Texas Thespians professional developments. And so while I was up here, or over here, I guess, because it's not really up, because I'm now, I think, north. Since I'm in North Houston, it's over. But I am over here in Bastrop, and I stopped in San Marcos and grabbed a quick interview from somebody that is famously living in San Marcos, and you'll know who that is. If you don't know who that is, you'll know who that is in a couple of weeks. But so I've been grabbing some interviews and really enjoying my time doing this. It's been a hell of a month. You know, we go back to school as this drops. This drops on August 1st. I'm going back to school August 2nd. My wife is going back August 2nd. Some of you are going back. Some of you are already back if you're like in a leadership position. So we're back, and we are masking indefinitely. We've been told we are going to be masking up indoors. We have to mask up indoors, and we're not being told when we're going to stop. So hope everybody's staying safe. You know, the no matter how you feel about any of the pandemic and vaccination stuff, you know, I hope everybody's staying safe. I, for one, am vaccinated, so if you see me walking the halls, and you know, you want to have a quick chat, if you're part of my team, we can take the mask off. Okay, we can. But I want to protect my children. I want to protect my two little girls who cannot get vaccinated yet. And no matter how, if this is media driven or not, I don't care, man. I'm not willing to risk it. So I'm willing to mask up for a short amount of time relative to how long I'm hopefully on this earth. So, anyway, enough of that discussion. The other thing I got to do is we had an unfortunate incident at my school where a teacher got in some hot water. I won't go into details about that, but because of that, I had to work an event. So I've already worked an event in 2 weeks prior to my actual start date, and my boss, the head of school, even made a joke to me saying, "You're going to hold the record for being fired negative 2 weeks into the job." So he was totally tongue in cheeking, but it was pretty funny at the time. I guess he had to be there. But anyway, so I worked this event. It was a donors event and had a performance by Mallory Bechtel, and it was like totally awesome. She's in Dear Evan Hansen. She's also a graduate of the school, so that was really neat to watch. And she's really cool if you know anything about Mallory. Super down to earth. I was forced literally into taking a picture with her. One of the parents that I was sitting with, a very persistent parent, was like, "Blake, take a picture with her. Come on, take a picture with her." So it was right next to her. So what was I supposed to do? No, I'm good. So I did. Anyway, but that was my introduction to my new school. And I'm a spoiled brat. I'm a spoiled brat. Anyway, the last thing I'm going to say is we moved into a new house, so my little studio is still kind of getting the kinks out of it. So you're going to hear this interview, and Demond you can hear just fine, which you're supposed to. You're supposed to hear the interview not the interviewer. It's a little hard to hear me, but fast forward through my parts. Yeah, I mean, you hear me all the time. I'm talking right now. So it is a little difficult to hear me, but feel free to fast forward through my parts and just listen to the walking, talking box of inspiration that is Demond Wilson. Everyone, enjoy.
My journey to where I am now. I grew up in a little bitty town called Andrews, Texas. And I lived there from the time that I was 3 years old till I was 8, and then we moved to Dallas, and I ended up in a school district called Plano, and I really went through the Plano school system from the time that I was in the 6th grade through my senior year. I graduated from Plano Senior High and went from there to Southern Methodist University, where I earned my BFA in theater and also my teaching certificate there. And I was very fortunate from there to go and student teach at Arlington Martin, and would eventually be hired to teach there full time. I was teaching both theater arts and the competitive speech. So I had the interp team and debate team, and also was directing shows there as well. And was very fortunate to work with Karen Baker and Larry Cure there. And we ended up taking the play A View from the Bridge to state my very first year. And we won the state championship that year in 5A, which was the largest A at that time. And so I left after that year to try to start my own program, which I did at Carrollton Creek View High School, and started the program there. And in our second year, we went to state. And in our third year, we went back and won state. And in my fourth year, we went back to state, took second. And then eventually I would leave to go and start this company called The Perfect Performance. And I left for a year, and then I came back for 2 more years, and we had another state appearance and took second at state with Intimate Apparel. And then that's when I full-time turned over the program to an incredible person by the name of Missy Head, who would take that program and really run with it all those years later going to state back to back to back, and doing that. Um, and I've pretty much have spent the rest of my time roaming all over the country. I've been to Hawaii, California, New York, Chicago, far South Texas, and everything doing the perfect performance, working with teachers and students on speech and theater, doing clinics. Um, I've gotten to the point to where I was so busy that I was at home maybe 2 days out of every month. And from there, I eventually ended up in South Texas. COVID hit, and it kind of has flipped everything upside down. And now I'm in the process of reinvention post COVID. What does life look like now? And I'm dead in the middle of that as we speak. And that has landed me in Harlingen, Texas. So my career's taken me all over the country. It's also had me move all over the country. And it's been quite an adventure.
Is this kind of where, as a kid, is this kind of what you wanted to do, the theater arts, and then going on into education and educating the theater arts?
I knew as a kid that I wanted to be one of three things. I wanted to be either an attorney, an actor, or a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that my life has gone, I've been all of them. it's what
Right.
it's what it feels like. But certainly an actor and a teacher, I've gotten to do, and I've gotten to deal with a lot of attorneys. So it all kind of worked out in that way. But that's what was in me as a kid.
Yeah. When was the moment you knew you wanted to do theater? Do you remember when you got bit?
Oh yeah, it was in the third grade. It's why I always believe that if you can get a kid hooked early, it's a life changing moment. I had an opportunity to play a lightning bug in the Christmas play. And it was a dangerous thing because they gave me a full backup crew. We were all in costume. My costume, the actual tail of my costume lit up, and I got to sing a solo with the group called This Little Light of Mine, and it was a jazzy number. And so we had all these steps, and I'm out there, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And after that, the crowd was up on their feet, and my mom was crying, and my mom's best friend Mandy was crying, and it was just extraordinary. All of the watching a crowd react and smile and laugh and be moved by what we were doing on stage. And I was addicted to that. I wouldn't get an opportunity to do it again until the eighth grade, but I knew that whatever that was, I wanted to be a part of doing that for and to people.
Right. Right. And you went to Plano. Was Plano the big kind of was that the juggernaut back then, as it is now? Plano is probably one of the larger school. It should be an 8A. Uh, it's one of those, or the schools in Plano. Was it as big then, or was it still kind of coming up?
Yes, no, it was absolutely huge. At that time, we had Plano Senior High and we had Plano East. So Plano West wasn't even a thought, I don't think, at that particular time. But our school was huge. It always reminded me of a huge community college.
Yeah. Right.
And so, yeah, we had a whole bunch of people there. And I was fortunate while I was in high school, my junior year, we went to state and won act
Yeah.
my junior year. And, that was really, some of the foundation of what would make me into who I am today.
Yeah.
That was my foundation, was starting there and at Vines High School.
Was it competitive? I mean, did you feel a sense of accomplishment when you were cast or a part of different productions, or was the theater program smaller? You hear these horror stories about large theater programs and kids not getting a huge opportunity because they just aren't seen really. You've got your 5 or 6 stars. Were you able to break through that? Was it something you needed to do? You found necessary back then?
Yeah, we had a big program. Um, we had a big program and a very successful program and a very serious program. You had to be on top of your game in
Right.
order to be able to get a role there. And I fortunately got really great roles while I was there. But we definitely had to compete for them. And there was no nonsense. And we always understood that every single day for us was an audition. And it was our day to either keep our role or to lose it.
Right. How do you? So you've done quite a bit with one act plays and adjudicator now. Uh, what do you tell a school that doesn't advance, maybe on early on in the process? By the time you get to region or state, it's like if you don't advance, you have a good show. Whereas the kids in zone and district and things like that, just because they don't advance doesn't mean they don't have a good show, but they don't necessarily feel they have a good show because they did not advance. What do you tell those
Yeah.
kids based on your own, or maybe not even based on your experience, but just like what is it something that you tell them to say, hey, it's okay, it's going to be all right. What are those words from Demand?
Well, let me say this. Actually, I needed to correct you on something.
Okay, okay.
I have never adjudicated an official
Uh,
UIL one act
you've
play
clinicked. You've
contest
clinicked. Yeah.
ever.
Okay.
I clinic all over the
Okay.
place,
Okay.
all over the place, and I also want to kind of speak to that because that adjudicator's job, that's so hard, and you're so splitting hairs, and it's just, I love being in on the creative process, on what do we do in order to make the work happen, not necessarily evaluating the end product, but I love being a part of the process as they're building it. But I can tell you what I used to tell my students: some of the best work that we ever didn't advance. And some of the crappiest work that we have ever
Right.
done did.
Right. Right.
And at the end of the day, the work for me was never measured by the success in terms of how far the play went. And I know some people, whatever, may listen to this or may watch this, and they may say, yeah, sure, Damon, y'all were at stake so much, and that's easy for you to say and everything. But I really do mean this. If the process was bad, to me, the show wasn't worth it. And what I mean by bad is that, did the kids show up prepared every day to bring me as a director some choices to work with? Or was it just about the decisions that I made out of my head? I do not like one-sided creating of shows. I want for the actors I teach you so that you can reach into your own creativity and you know where to find that within yourself so that when you come to me, you bring me a buffet of choices.
Nice. Yeah. No.
So I always measured our success with how much did kids bring back to that process and how much of that could they do without me. And the most successful things that I ever did were things that I didn't do, but that the kids did. The choices that they made that were just incredible that I never would have thought to do in a million years.
Right. Right.
That's what was extraordinary to me when they would say, "Hey, Mr. Wilson, we just blocked the scene. Hey, watch this." And I walked in and we were doing Dancing at Lunasa. And for whatever reason, Missy was gone and I had gotten sick. I think she and I both had gotten sick, and so we had parents there um, that were we had parents there that were watching the kids from our booster club and all of that. And so they came up with this moment in which um, he walked out on stage and he said, God, what was the line? Oh, yeah, it was a dancing as if words no longer existed because language was no longer necessary. And then he turns back to the group and he takes this dust out of his pocket and he spins around in a circle and he goes, and when he blew this dust, everybody disappeared behind the stage. And I walked up there, and the kid said, "Well, Mr. Wilson, what do you think?" And I just burst out into tears. And they were like, "Oh my God, it's so bad. It's so bad. We'll fix it. We'll fix it." And I'm like, "No, y'all don't understand. I'm so overwhelmed because it was so beautiful. And not only was it so beautiful, but you all did it." And it just really overwhelmed me because I'm like, you guys get it. Like, y'all don't need me anymore. And that to me is the measure of success is when you've taught them to a point to where they don't need you anymore, that's when it's successful because then they can make it.
Right. Right.
And that's really what I gauge my productions on. So we really competed against ourselves. We weren't really competing against anybody. And I think that's what really made the
Yeah.
difference.
I'm sure she wouldn't mind me mentioning it, but I've had a lot of chats with Destiny Miller at Bush High School, and they've had a lot of success recently over the past few years going to state, and so the pressure is no longer, uh, the pressure's greater now because they don't feel, it used to be they advance once and all was good. Now there's that community pressure. There's the pressure within the school, and last year the
Hmm.
superintendent came to the parade. All these different internal pressures, but it's the same thing. It's the kids no longer now. Mind you, yes, Destiny has quite a bit of a say in the show, but the kids have become the department. It's not the department just includes kids, and but that pressure has changed quite a bit with success. Did you find that with you as well, that it became more? It's almost as it became harder to, kind of get that monkey off your back kind of thing to say, look, we've been successful. Can't that be enough? Now you have to keep that success up and continue the success and meet these standards. Can you speak on that at all?
I would love to because
Okay.
I think that psychologically, and you can call Missy and you can call up a lot of schools that we used to compete with, and she would always say to me, "How in the world are you so calm? Like all this is at stake, and how can you be so calm?" You know, and other schools, or whatever, would come in, and my kids were so calm, and I was so calm, and then people would say, "Well, you all just know you're going to win. That's why you're so calm. That's what it is." And here goes the thing.
Yeah.
It had not our calmness had nothing to do with us thinking we were going to win. It had nothing to do with the fact that I somehow subdued them with some voodoo, some kind of a way. It had nothing to do with any of that. It had everything to do with this. At the end of the play, Sideman, and this is something that we used to say at every single one of our, because we won state with Sideman, but we would say this at the end of every single one of our warm ups. At the very end, he says, they played not for fame and certainly not for money. They played for each other. And that was the difference for us, is that every year it wasn't about how do we compete against last year. It wasn't about how do we outdo last year. It was about how do we find the magic in the group that we have? How do we maximize their voices? How do we find the play that fits them the best? Not the play that's going to win. Because the year that Missy and I did Dancing at Lunasa, that was a tired script to do at that time. Like, we just won state with Sidemen, which nobody knew.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back with this well-known, well-traveled, miled out show called Dancing at Lunasa. Why would you bring that mess in here when you should be doing something different now? We need to go and do something nobody's ever heard of it. We need to do the play that fits the people. And I don't care what that title is. If it's great literature and it fits your kids, then that's what you do. And you play that hand for all that it's worth. And if my kids every single time are bringing me work that they're able to create on their own, that we're able to marry together with that, and that we're able to find that magic, and then they go up there on that stage and they literally light that stage up, what else can I expect from them? And I would tell my kids all the time, what does going to state have to do with the fact that, for example, if you're doing close ties, that you're dealing with a lady that is struggling with, do I put my mother in a home or not? What does that have to do with the fact that the mother right now is going through Alzheimer's and her world doesn't make sense to her, and she thinks she's seeing things that she's not seeing, and she loves her family, but she knows that things are going out of control in her life? What does going to state have to do with the work that we're doing right now? Going to state is the end result. Advancing is the end result, but stay with the work. You will never, ever lose yourself, and you will never, ever lose your kids as long as the work remains the most important thing. The words and the work and the process. That's the difference. And so we were never worried about, well, the superintendent thinks this, or this person thinks that, or this parent. And I would always have people come in all the time trying to put all of that on me. And I would go, guys, that has nothing to do with what we're doing. What? And I fundamentally believed it. And every time they would jump to new heights and all this stuff. And people were like, well, we don't understand. How are y'all able to do this? It's because it was about, they played not for fame. They played not for advancement. And they played certainly not for money. They played for each other. And if you're not careful, you can lose yourself trying to win. It's so easy to do that. But I was so fortunate because I love words. I love literature. I love exploring those worlds with students. I love the power that kids can bring onto that stage in those moments. And that was always so exciting to me. And I always used to tell my kids, listen, if we lose, we still win, because by God, we finally get to have a normal life. And if we win, then we win because we get the honor of being able to tell that story again and exploring more and more in depth with that. So either which way you go, we're going to be okay.
Man.
You know,
Yeah.
and we really were, and we handled it in that way, and it was very healthy.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen directors that have won so much, and they'll get to state and they're all yelling at their kids, and things are so intense, and everything is so, and I'm back there, we're playing spades. I don't know if y'all even know what that game is.
Oh yeah.
We're playing cards and laughing and having a good time. And I'll never forget, they were doing an Interscope show. they used to make fun of the plays
Yeah.
at One Act.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before my kids went out there for Sideman, the crew overheard me tell my kids my very last words to my kids in Sideman were, I looked at them, I said, "Hey guys," and they said, "What?" I said, "Don't suck." And I walked out off there, and the crew, everybody fell out laughing up there. And my kids laughed too. And then they went over there, and that curtain went up, and they lit that audience up. And they made fun of it in the Intersco show because they said, and the director's final words to his cast were, "Don't suck." And then the guy said, "And you know what? It didn't."
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do too. I usually I'll high five all the kids except for one or something. You know, it's just something to kind of break the ice, just to joke around or do something because usually we're not the football coaches that go out there and yell and scream and tell them to they got to hit the other person hard enough to knock them out and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I totally get that. It's not about the pep talk. It's about just what the kids need. But anyway, that normally I try to end my podcast. I'm not ending this interview yet, but normally what I do is my formula, which is not very intense or difficult, but is to just have the person end with like words of encouragement, words of advice, anything like that. And that's all you're doing is giving words of encouragement, words of advice. But I would be a fool to end it now. So here's what I want to do. I want to switch from one act play, partially because I don't want to just label you as a one act play director, but also there, what I'm finding with this is there are quite a few directors that don't want to walk into an interview with a new principal or new administration and only be asked about what did you do with one act? How successful have you been with one act? It's also to some people about what do they do for their community and what have they done on campus and what shows have they done and community outreach and all this kind of stuff. So I want you to talk a little bit about also how your on-campus work has kind of affected you and affected the kids and the departments that you've been a part of, had your thumbprint on, and also then maybe speak on how that transitions into your company, because I do want you to talk about Perfect Performance and kind of what that is and how that changes from state to state even. I just unpacked a lot for you, but I want you to talk about that on-campus work first and maybe how that differs from your experience as a one-act play director and not as an adjudicator, but as a clinician. But speak on that a little bit too. All your on-campus efforts as well.
Well, first of all, um, you asked me a lot of questions
Yeah.
there,
I
and
did.
I will do my best to answer as many of them
Do whatever. Yeah.
as they come to
This
me.
is why I don't have my own talk show.
But
But yeah, go.
no, it's all good. It's all good. So first of all, I want to speak to the fact of what we did as far as community outreach. Within my department, I'll always taught my kids that it's important to give back. So my seniors always worked with my juniors. My juniors always worked with my sophomores. My sophomores always worked with my freshmen. So we had almost a trickle down art effect going on. Okay. So that was that within the department. Outside of the department, we would always go and perform for English classes. We would go down to our middle schools and do outreach there. And we would also go into elementary schools and perform for elementary kids or have elementary kids and middle schools or whatever come up and see those performances as well. I call that outreach, not just because it was a great recruiting tool for us, and it was, but it was an opportunity for us to get kids into our program that a lot of other people would call throwaways. And I used to love those kids. They would come in with multicolored hair and alternative kids and people that, had reading disabilities and all of these kind of disabilities. And all of a sudden, whatever, I would find that these kids that were disabled were absolutely phenomenal in theater, would have all of these hidden talents and whatnot, because I believe that theater has the ability to change people's lives. And sometimes the best thing that it ever did for a kid was an opportunity for them to be able to stand up there in front of a group and not sweat or not pass out or not shake so bad that they didn't know, what to do. But our outreach was finding those people that needed to be there in order to be helped by what the theater is able to do. I think that that was our biggest thing, is that a lot of people would say to me, the only reason why I come to school is so I can be in theater class. And a lot of kids, that's the only reason why they graduated or why they did so well, is because they had that opportunity. And that to me is the biggest outreach, is reaching out there and saving kids through this art. That was our outreach.
Right. Yeah, and we
If that
just
makes
yeah, no,
sense.
that was no, that was perfect. We just had not to plug Texas Thespians professional development, because this will probably air after that's all done, but we had Amy Jordan speak, and it wasn't about Texas Thespians. It wasn't really about any of that stuff. And what one of her biggest takeaways was, she said she grew her department at Denison because she just said, "Give me all the kids. Just if a kid doesn't want to do, uh, X, Y, and Z, I'll take them. If they don't want to go over here, I'll take. Just give me everybody." And so
Wow.
that's kind of a similar sentiment, as far as just give me the kids, and we'll figure out what they're good at, and they'll figure out what they're good at, because we'll allow them to do that. We'll give them that freedom. So yeah, that's great. Once you start getting these kids in, once you start getting as you said, and you put it in quotes, so because it's not, there's no video element to this, so I don't want people listening to this that the throwaway kids or whatever. It was that air quote thing. It wasn't actually your sentiment, if you will, but those kids that are, and I always said, now I'm in a different situation, but when I would go to ARD for some of my students, and they would say, "Okay, Mr. Miner, how are they in theater?" I'd say they're great. I don't understand why you're having an issue in English class or science class. And
Exactly.
yeah, the issue is that they don't want to be there, and they want to be in my room. And that's,
Right.
what are you doing wrong and I'm doing right that is creating that situation. So, but anyway,
Exactly.
yeah. So where did you end up? Kind of, not where, how did you end up using these kids in your program, and then building your shows, and building your, even, shoot, you probably have done a couple of car washes, or those kind of fundraising type things that you have to do. Do you end up finding homes for them in those places, or just keeping them a part of your community, a part of your program, just to keep them close, and let them know that they have a place to go? Because, Demond, I don't need you to throw anybody under the bus, but some of those kids, although unique, are not necessarily talented. So you do sometimes have to find a place for them, because you don't want them to go to the curb. So how did you end up using some of those kids in unique ways, or even maybe even non-unique ways, a very normal type of way? You want to talk about that?
I always found, and I would always tell kids, there is a place for you somewhere in this program. Costumes, keeping the room clean,
Yeah.
keeping the library organized, uh, lighting,
Right.
set building, uh, helping out with our fundraisers. Yes, we did garage sales, we did car washes, we did waiting over at Sonic. We would take over for the wait staff, and whatever tips we made
Okay.
went back into the program. Everything was going out and selling ads for our program, for our musical, and things like that. There was always a job for everybody to be able to do something to contribute to be able to make the magic happen on stage, and that kids would feel like they were a part of the success of that production, because I was very clear about, if we don't have all of these things happening, then these productions can't happen.
Right. Right.
And so they always felt like they were a part of a bigger thing or a very successful thing.
Yeah.
And that worked out well for us.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you this, and I don't know if you have an answer to this. Some people don't, but is there something unique you used to do in your department that you don't feel other people might do? And that can be either a quirky kind of tradition thing. The week you induct thespians, you have them do a song and dance number for everybody, or is there something that you did in your department that you feel might not be done across the state of Texas or even around the country? And the answer may be no. That's okay too.
Well, I will say this, and maybe this is happening more than I realize, but I really taught the kids to love to read.
Yes. Okay.
And because of that, when it would come around to one act time or for musical time and all that, I never really had a problem finding a play, because they would be in there. They read this, read that, and like, Wilson this, and Wilson this, and what about this. And I was like, what? What's that about? Oh, and then this happens in the story. Oh, and just listen to this part right here when they say this. And look, and the more and more I go around the programs, I'm not seeing kids reading. I see kids waiting on their director to read, but I don't see them bringing the literature to the table in ways that my kids were bringing that literature to the table. And I thought that's very important, because it's hard to see the fact that a lot of plays are really related to one another. We spend so much time trying to find the magic bullet. Oh, this is the play right here. And the reality of it is this play is really like this play, which is really like this play, which is really like this play, but you have to read enough in order to see the commonalities.
Right. So what did you do? What did you
And
do?
I think that my kids really read a lot, and I see that disappearing more and more and more.
Do
Like,
you?
I go into people's libraries, and the books are just dusty, and I'm like,
Yeah.
nobody's touched these books.
What did you do to get them to? I mean, I know it's probably a process. It's not an overnight thing, but what did you, in a nutshell, do to get them to do that? Because I try very very hard as well. My biggest thing is that I prided myself on, and this has to do with I was taught by Bob Singleton, and so he kind of instilled this in me. But don't let them leave the school not knowing our town, not knowing Death of a Salesman, not knowing A Raisin in the Sun. You can't let them, if they get to college and they don't know these plays, that's an embarrassment on me, not them. Um, and sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't, but I never had a magic potion. It had to do a little bit with the buy-in from the student. So is there something a process that you kind of went through to get them to buy in like that?
Yeah, I think, and this is an unfortunate thing, because I think that this animal, and I mean this animal as in this teacher, is just about dead and gone now.
Yeah.
But I came from that generation, or really, I think really my generation was the last of it, of the people that did both speech tournaments and theater.
Right. Right.
So my kids, and where we weren't in conflict. Oh, those tournaments are just, theaters, ugh. No, I'm like, no, y'all better learn how to make both of these things. And yes, there are some techniques and things that are different in each, but in one weekend, my kids would be exposed, especially if they went to the final round, which all of my kids were required to go and see, and all of that. You could be exposed up to, 50, 60, 70 plays in one weekend.
Right.
And so then they would see those things, and then they would go, and I would say, okay, now, find three things that you saw and get those plays, and I would have them do reports on those things. And they would come back with, oh, I saw this and I loved it, but now I read the whole story and they missed all of this in their cutting and all of that in their cutting. And so we were constantly having new literature brought in because they were constantly being exposed to it week after week after week. Now, not doing the tournaments anymore, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult, but that was a huge advantage that we had, is that we did both. And it made the kids want to read it because they were seeing other kids successful with the material. So thus they wanted to read that material. And it was a way that I kind of suckered them into learning how to love to read those stories.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, it's I think you're very very right, very on the nose with kids not reading as much and waiting for the director to do the work. And I'm sure we could talk for a long time about that. But so what I want to go to now, kind of the plug part of the conversation. So perfect performance, or the perfect performance. Um, I just moved to right outside the Woodlands. I'm going to be teaching in the Woodlands. I have to remember that it's not
Wow.
Woodlands, it's the Woodlands. It's a fit, you know, it's
The
so
Woodlands.
anyway, the perfect performance.
Yes.
So I know that I would assume that some of your stuff is wrapping up, that you have on your website right now, and it's going to transition because you have lots of summer related, you know, summer workshops and things like that. But what is the perfect
Sure.
performance? Again, give that kind of elevator pitch. You know, I'll ask some questions off of it, but I see that you do the online coaching, which was that a thing before COVID, or did you
Mm,
do online teaching before? You do in service script
I
cutting?
did it. Yeah.
Okay, you offer a
Yeah.
lot, and I want you to talk about the company a little bit, pitch it a little bit, and then I might ask some questions about it.
Well, first of all, the perfect performance was born. Um, the perfect performance came and found me. I didn't go looking for it. I was very happy doing my stuff at my school. And all of a sudden, I started getting phone calls from people starting out in California, actually, is where it really started. And I would fly out there to California and work with their kids on just coaching them on speech and debate. And then eventually people started calling me all over the country. And I really had to make the decision of, what am I going to do? Because what I began to realize is that there were a lot of teachers from all over the country that needed my help, that needed to know what are the secrets to making this program successful. How do we do this and not kill ourselves in the process? How do we do this and take this up to the next level? What do we do in order to make that magic happen in our program? And I'll never forget that I went to my principal and I was in tears and I said, I've really got to make a decision because I'm working 7 days a week. And I was hardly able to go with the kids to tournaments because, and I'm saying all this, I know I'm trying to plug the business, but I think it's always important to know where it
Yeah,
started and what
absolutely.
the intent of it
Yeah.
is. And I said to her, I said, I've got to make a choice because I can't keep doing this 7 day a week thing. And she said to me, she said, when I hired you, I knew that I had captured a rare bird. And she said, I knew that because you have taken our students to heights that in 30 some years as being a principal, I never thought that they could reach. She said, you came in here, this little young whippersnapper. You taught for 1 year. Y'all had just won state in one act. And you're telling me that within 5 years, we're going to be state champions. And you did it in 3. And you took us to state in 2. And we're already, on the map and you're doing all these incredible things. And she says, I knew that we could only trap this rare bird for so long. And she said, Damon, she said, you have to fly now. She said, because people need you all over the country, and it would be selfish to keep you here. And she said, I am accepting your letter of resignation. And she and I both cried in her office and held one another. And I'll never forget that day because it was a moment in which I loved my kids and I loved those moments. And I wanted to travel across the country and be able to share that magic. And I was blessed enough to do that for 25 years. Go into people's classrooms where I would see people drowning and ready to quit. And suddenly it's like I'm rushing in like a 911 with 911 oxygen saying, no, teacher, you can live. You're going to make it. And kids, y'all can be better. And y'all are going to help this teacher. And this is what you're going to do. And to watch those programs that were splintering and falling apart come back together. Or to watch these people that their programs were in such a high level and they're like, we don't know how we're going to maintain this. And I'm about to go off the rails, or, you know, and to show them coping strategies and what all we do. So the perfect performance, what is it? The reason why we offer a lot is because I bring everything that I have to the table. And I look at, where is your program succeeding? Where is it failing? And I try to design a plan around a program that will help it maximize itself. And some people, I think, over the years have thought of the perfect performance as some quick elixir. You know, we always want the mega shake. You know, we want to lose 50 pounds and I want one drink and poof, boom, it's ready to go. And the perfect performance is not that. The perfect performance is process-based. It is about figuring out strengths and weaknesses, and it's about designing a program customized to programs to be able to get the most out of students, to be able to get the most out of teaching, to get the most out of your administration, and to hopefully help teachers do this for a very, very long time. That's what the perfect performance is.
Man. And so what, wow, that's, I mean, you are an inspiration, sir, but where has perfect performance taken you that you didn't see it taking you? Where have you gone that you thought, man, I never thought in a million years that I would be doing this or be here right now?
Mm. It almost took me to the Oprah Winfrey show.
Okay.
I was I was I was invited because a teacher friend of mine actually was tricked by Oprah. He was told that he was just there to do a taping behind the scenes, and the lady said, "Stick your head in there," and he stuck his head in there, and Oprah looked at him and said, "Tommy Lindsay, is that you?" And she says, "Come on out here." And she gave him $100,000
Wow.
for an Angel Award.
Wow.
And I felt very proud of that because I was a huge part of that, of helping him with his students and all of that. And he invited me, he begged me, he said, please come to the Oprah show. And I'm like, no, these kids need me here. And I chose to stay with kids versus going to see Oprah.
Wow.
It took me all the way out to Hawaii to work with some amazing, amazing kids at Kamehameha High School. And they threw a luau for me.
Wow.
And the president of the school was there. And all of a sudden, we were eating this big, huge, amazing dinner at the president's house. And all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, this huge choir comes in and they start singing this beautiful song about lead us to a place, help us with your grace, and all this stuff, and this live music and all this stuff. And I'm sitting back, and all this was for me. I I I was speechless. And they're like,
That's awesome.
for all that you've done for all these kids, I was like, how in the world?
Yeah.
It's led me to some really, really small towns, but little Towanda, Pennsylvania, which I ended up actually moving to Towanda. And with those kids in Towanda, people had said, oh, this is a little farming community. I mean, our town maybe had, maybe 200 people in it. And I never lived in a place like that before.
Wow. Yeah.
And like they would shut the school down for a thing called Buck Day, where kids would go out and hunt with their dads and their moms for deer. Like that's a thing.
That's a
They
holiday.
would come in, oh, this was we got venison sausage and all. I'm like, no, baby, I appreciate you, but not today. That kind of a thing.
That's
And I would eventually work with those kids, and we went to state in one act, and with those 3 kids played over 40 roles between the 3 of them in one play. And we had 2 light cues, lights on and lights off. And we had no sound. And I'll never forget being on that state stage. We ran through our 2 light cues and we did some vocal checks and all that. And then I gathered all the kids up and we sat around in a circle and we talked about how we got there. And the other teacher that was there with me, she said that she heard somebody say, bless their hearts. They're from a little bitty farm school. Bless their hearts. They're just sitting up there on that stage and they don't even have any sound. And it's just going to be a long day for them. But isn't it sweet that they're here? And we come out there to do our actual play. And what they didn't know is that all of our kids were in the band. So our sound was all played live.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden from out of our benches, the clarinet comes out, the saxophone comes out. We had a little child's piano, which he played it like he was playing a grand piano. And all of a sudden this play lights up and all of our little lighting instruments, we had them live and we were beating on things and all this kind of stuff was done live. And then they would play all these different characters and you would see them change right in front of the audience and the play kept moving and people were just like shocked and amazed by that. And by the end of it, I'll never forget, somebody grabbed me on my shoulder and this lady, she said, who are you? I said, who am I? I said, well, what are you talking about? My name is Devon Wilson. No, who are you? And what is this? We've never seen anything like this. We thought y'all were just some little farm school. I said, we are. What are you talking about? We're little Towanda, little sad school, remember? And we proceeded to take straight ones and win the state championship that day at that little farm school. So it took me to places like that. It took me into people's homes. It took me into meeting all kinds of people from all over the world. And I've had a charmed life. I have an advantage of the fact that I know what they're doing on the West Coast. I know what kind of theater and stuff is happening on the East. I know what's happening in the North. So when I'm critiquing things, I'm bringing in all kinds of stuff that people are like, what? I never even thought about that. I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing this over here. This is what's happening over here. And, it's taken me to some incredible places. I've met some incredible celebrities and just met some normal people that are doing extraordinary stuff. And when that bird was let out of that cage, I flew and my whole thing was if I wasn't going to be at Creekview with my kids, then by God, I wanted to do something great. And I hope with the perfect performance, that's what I was able to do.
Minor wisdom.